Hello, students. A very good afternoon. So, today we are going to start a new chapter that is human health and disease. So, before we head on to the details of this chapter, I would like to launch a technical poll. So, please let me know if the audio and video is clear through the polls. All right. So, here we go. And students from YouTube, you can just type in the chat box if you find any technical issues. Okay. All right, students. So, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. If you find any of the technical difficulties in the middle of the session, you can just post it in the chat box or you can raise the hand. We can take care of that issue. Okay. So let's get on to the today's session. So before we head on to the details of some of the very interesting concepts that we're going to talk about. So here are some of the things that we are going to discuss. So first is we are going to define what is health and what are the common diseases in human beings. Okay, that will be today's session. And in the future sessions, it will be, I will talk about immunity, AIDS, cancer, drug and alcohol abuse. Okay, fine. So as usual, we have a quiz session. So here is your first question. Which of the following disease is confirmed by viral test? So your options are tuberculosis, typhoid, plague, and tetanus. So here are your options. So let me launch an MCQ poll. Hold on. 1 second, people. Yeah. Yes. Your polls are live now, so you can answer the question. Which of the following is confirmed by a viral test? So we have a minute to answer this question. Okay, now, so you have reached your time limit. That is 1 minute. So I'm going to end the poll right now. So let's see if your answers are right. Okay. So viral test is a test that is done to detect, okay, typhoid, and the antigen or the causative agent for typhoid is Salmonella typhi. So if you see this causative agent, it is flagellated organism. So one of the methodologies to detect the presence of this pathogen is to find some of the antigens that are present on the flagellar surface and even the cell wall. So viral test is popularly known as triple antigen test. So we're going to study the details about how the test is done and how the results are obtained. Okay. So let's go to the next question. Which of the following set includes a bacterial disease? So you have options like tetanus, typhoid, tuberculosis, smallpox, influenza, tetanus, meningitis, measles, and syphilis, and none of the above. Okay. So let me launch a poll for you. Yeah. You have a minute to answer this question. All right, we have reached the time limit. Of all the given options that we have here, okay, so the first option, if you observe, tetanus, typhoid, and tuberculosis, okay, so all of these are bacterial diseases. So if you go to the rest of the options like meningitis, measles, and syphilis, smallpox, influenza, and tetanus, so here influenza is not a bacterial disease, okay. Here syphilis and measles, oh sorry, syphilis is not a bacterial disease. So our option A is right, okay. So what are we going to learn in this session? First of all, we will define what is a disease, what are the types of diseases, and we'll list down what are the bacterial diseases and what are the protozoan diseases, their causative agents, and what are the symptoms and prevention. And if you're lucky, we are going to have a class quiz. Okay. So first of all, if we have to talk about health, human health, so what defines human health? Is it just the physical fitness, or is it physical impairment where you have fever, where you have cold, or where you are not feeling physically well in any of the aspects, or you're very healthy and you are mentally disturbed? Okay. So can we call a person who is not healthy in mind as healthy? Or can we call a person who is healthy in mind and body, but not having a right social behavior? Okay, like breaking the glasses, picking up fights, being hyper aggressive. Okay, so can we call this healthy? So we definitely do not call these things as healthy, because for a human being to have a very prosperous and very peaceful life, he has to balance in all the aspects to be called as healthy. So health defines physical, physiological, mental or psychological, spiritual, okay, and social well-being. Okay, so we need all these aspects in a normal person to become healthy, right? So there are so many things that are relevant to health. Let me give you one example. Whenever we have a particular illness, okay, there are several cases in our society. One of the very interesting case is cancer. So if you see, some of the people might come up through the social media or through some of the normal media coverage, that they might have gone to the cancer illness. They might be the victims of cancer illness, but fortunately, after some period of time, these people might have healed well. And some people who even have a minor illness, they might have gone to the terminal level. So how is it happening? So mental stability and mental strength becomes one of the major factors in making the person healthy or unhealthy. Okay. So this we call it as a placebo effect. So we'll learn about it when you get more interested in how our mind and mental strength helps in healing the diseases. Okay. So we have to maintain even physical health and physiological health through our food and diet and exercise. Okay. And mental health by meditation, practice of yoga. Okay. And spiritual health for overall well-being and not feeling ungrateful or ungratified in our life. Okay. So what is a disease? In any of these situations, if a person is showing any of these conditions that I mentioned, okay, impairment in any of the factors that I mentioned, then we can call a person as unhealthy or he is having a certain disease. So can we categorize the diseases into simpler categories? Definitely. So we can categorize them based on how the disease behaves. We have infectious diseases and we have non-infectious diseases. Okay. So when it comes to infectious diseases, recently you might have seen the examples of how the world was shaken up by one of the infectious diseases that we suffered from, that is COVID-19. Okay. So HIV is another infectious disease, cholera, diphtheria, typhoid, dengue, malaria. So if you see a disease spreading from one person to another person, then we can call it as infectious disease. And what are non-infectious disease? So these are congenital disorders, okay, or genetic disorders, which do not transfer from one person to another person. So they include such as blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, okay, and CKD, that is chronic kidney disease, okay, and some of the genetic disorders, okay, like sickle cell anemia, thalassemia, PKU, okay, phenylketonuria, or Klinefelter syndrome, Down syndrome. So these are very constricted or very reserved to a person alone, and it does not spread in a community or among the individuals. And these diseases, we call it as non-infectious diseases. Okay. So now coming to the infectious disease, first we will study what are bacterial diseases. Okay. So in under bacterial disease, one of the famous examples or one of the most common diseases that usually people suffer from is typhoid, correct, right? So typhoid is a disorder. Maybe some of us would have got typhoid during our lifetime. Okay, so let's see what is typhoid. Typhoid is caused by a bacteria called as Salmonella typhi, and this is how it looks like. Okay, and how does it spread? The mode of transmission is through food and water. So that is why most of our elders tell us not to eat from outside, okay, and avoid outside food. So when you eat some of the infected food, now it enters through our small intestine, and first it will incubate in small intestine, it will proliferate, okay, and as it proliferates, now what happens in severe cases, okay, it can make perforations in the small intestine and spread to the rest of the body, okay, and rest of the organs, where it can become very, very deadly, and even it can lead to death. So what is the symptoms of this disease? The symptoms of these diseases are it causes sustained high fever, and the fever is characterized by a very steady temperature between 39 to 40 degrees Celsius. It will be between this range, 39 to 40 degrees Celsius, and it will not fluctuate down or above. And followed by the fever, there is headache, weakness, stomach pain, constipation, loss of appetite, that is difficulty in eating or not feeling hungry. Okay, so as I said, in severe cases, there is intestinal perforations, and it might lead to death also. Okay, so typhoid fever, as I said, unhygienic cooking, okay, drinking untreated water from the streams or lakes or even public water, okay, or unhygienic sanitation, open defecation or urination, okay. So and water pollution, that dumping of the sewage uh, by our government or the municipalities, okay. So this is about typhoid. Now there is a very interesting story about typhoid. uh, there was a cook called as Mary Malone. So Mary Malone, what she did was she carried on her profession by making bread and cooking food, and she used to sell this food. And people who used to visit her bakery and the restaurant, and people used to buy from her. But unfortunately, Mary Malone was a infectant of typhoid. She was carrying typhoid. Okay, so through her food, she started, spreading this disease for thousands of people over several years. So that is why she was infamously called as Typhoid Mary. Okay, so this is about one of the interesting stories about typhoid. If you see, how do we test typhoid? How do we detect that there is how do we detect about whether this disease is typhoid or something else? So we take the blood samples and we conduct an antigen based test called as triple antigen test. So you can see here the antigens from flagella, that is H antigen, the antigen from the cell wall, that is O antigen, and some of the antigens like liposaccharides are detected. So if there is presence, these antibodies will go and bind to these antigens, and it will precipitate, causing a color. So if there is a change in color, then we can call it as a typhoid positive. Understood? So this is about triple antigen test, or it is also commonly known as Widal test. Okay. Next, and the next disease is pneumonia. So pneumonia is a very, very deadly disease. We have seen the cases of pneumonia even in COVID, right? People used to, gradually develop pneumonia-like symptoms even in COVID cases. But here, what pneumonia we are talking is the pneumonia which is caused by a bacteria called as Streptococcus pneumonia, and in children it is called as Haemophilus influenza. Okay, so in children it is called as Haemophilus influenza, whereas in most of the adult cases it is Streptococcus pneumonia. So what is a mode of transmission? So basically, it's similar to how we faced recently when a person sneezes, or whenever a person, infected person touches you, or the utensils, the glasses, or any of the things that you daily use. Okay. And again, you touch your nasal nose or mouth. Okay. And if you don't wash or sanitize your hands and directly ingest food or touch your face and the facial parts, then there is a possibility of you catching pneumonia. Okay. So what are the symptoms of pneumonia? Before we discuss the symptoms of pneumonia, once the pneumonia actually enters into your body, it goes and colonizes your alveoli. Okay. It incubates in the alveoli, and as the disease prolongs, okay, as the disease prolongs, now it starts accumulating an infectious fluid within the alveolar sacs. So as the infectious fluid starts accumulating within the alveolar sacs, okay, now the person starts showing the symptoms. What are the symptoms? Basically, as the fluid accumulation occurs in alveoli, obviously a person will start facing respiratory problems. Okay, they will have difficulty in breathing, which we call it as labored breathing, right? They'll have fever, chills, cough, headache, okay, and sweating, loss of appetite, nausea, okay, vomiting sensation, okay, and excessive headache. There is chest pain, okay, there is constant chest pain, okay, and there is severe weakness that is also happening. All right. So these are some of the minor symptoms that happens in pneumonia. Whereas when it comes to severe cases, as the fluid accumulation prolongs within the lungs, now what happens? The nails turns bluish, okay, and the lips turn gray, and people will lose excessively high amounts of weight. Okay, so these are the highest symptoms of pneumonia. And how do we prevent pneumonia? Pneumonia is prevented basically by avoiding physical contact, okay, proper sanitation, wearing mask, okay, and recognizing the symptoms as early as possible, being away from the patients, okay, and using any of the sanitizers, hand sanitizers regularly. So that is how we prevent a pneumonia. All right. So, and the next disease is plague. So plague has shook the world in the past, okay, in a very recent times post-independence. Plague, many people are very, very scared of plagues, and our ancestors even talk about plagues, like our grandparents or right. So what is plague? Plague is, okay, caused by a pathogen called as Erisina pestis, okay, and the mode of transmission is by insect bite, and the insect bite happens through rat flea, okay, the flea that is on the rat's body, that is a vector for spreading this disease. Okay. Now what are the symptoms of plague? Plague, uh, the symptoms of plague initially starts with breathing problems. Okay, there is breathing problem where there is constriction. Okay, there is no free respiration, so there is constriction in breathing. So a patient starts experiencing fever. Okay, gangrene of toes, that is death of some of the muscle tissues happens, and then where it has to be amputated or completely that parts have to be removed. Okay, amputation, that is gangrene on toes, fingers, lips, nose, etc. Okay, and a Bumbo's formation will take place. What is Bumbo's formation? Near the armpits, okay, you can see that there is some lump-like structure that is forming, in the patient. So this is called as Bumbo's formation. So usually, how does it spread? You have rodents, and the fleas on the rodents will usually go and bite the humans, and that is how the plague spreads. Okay, so this is about plague. Now, when we talk about common infections in man with respect to viral diseases, okay, so there are several viral diseases that are caused by the viruses. Okay, so you might have heard about some of the diseases. It can be smallpox, it can be chicken pox recently. Okay, common cold is regularly that we suffer. Measles, okay, chikungunya, AIDS, polio, rabies, dengue, mumps, etc. So these are some of the diseases that occur in our society. Okay, let us see what are the causative organisms for causative agents for these respective viral diseases. So smallpox, it is also called as virola, and it is the causative agent is virola virus. Chickenpox, okay, varicella, and the varicella zoster is the causative agent. Common cold, it is also called as rentis or human rhinovirus or HRVs are responsible for this. Next one is measles. Okay, measles is caused by paramyxoviruses, and mumps are caused by rubella viruses. Hepatitis B, hepatitis viruses. Polio is poliovirus. Rabies is Lisa virus. Dengue is dengue virus. Chikungunya virus or chickpea, or AIDS is HIV. So these are the viruses and their respective diseases. All right. So let's see. So one of the viral diseases that we are going to discuss is common cold. Okay. So you might have got common cold, and you might have also gone to doctor, or you might have gone to the medical store to get some medication, like some of the syrups or some of the steams or wicks or whatever it is. But you might have just realized that whatever the medication you're giving, it's not helping you, right? It takes a lot of time to heal, right? So that is because we don't have any antibiotics for viral disease, especially common cold. We don't have any antibiotics for common cold. So that is why we just only treat symptoms. So you just have to think about yourself having a common cold back in the days, and then you can understand what were the symptoms that you caught up, right? So the pathogen for common cold is rhinovirus. Okay. And the mode of transmission is through droplet infection. Like when a person sneezes, coughs, okay, or touches you, the infected person touches you or the things around you. Okay. So then you touch your face, okay, or eat with the hand without sanitation. So then you will get the common cold. So what are the symptoms of common cold? The symptoms of common cold, the first thing, what happens to you? There is constant running nose. So running nose, then you will have redness of eyes, okay, difficulty in breathing, followed by fever, headache. Okay, headache is very, very common with respect to common cold. Okay, there is sore throat. So when you see any respiratory disorders that is caused by, or diseases caused by pathogens, you can divide the respiratory diseases into two categories. One is respiratory tract infection, other one is pulmonary infection. In case of pneumonia, as we just saw, in pneumonia went and colonized the alveolar sacs of our lungs, which is within the lungs. When an infection within the lungs occur, this is called as pulmonary infection. If the infection occurs in the nostrils or nasal cavity, okay, or near the pharynx or trachea, these are called as respiratory passage infection or respiratory tract infection. So common cold is an example for respiratory tract infection, okay, and it does not infect the lungs at all. So as I said, common cold, it goes by itself, and it usually lasts for 3 to 7 days. The symptoms will last for 3 to 7 days. And after that, you will start feeling easier. Okay. So fine. What are the symptoms? Running nose, fever, okay, rentis, cough, fainting, sore throat, headache, and weaknesses are some of the symptoms of common cold. All right. Fine. So the next disease is Helminthes disease. So this is a parasitic-based disease, okay? So if you see some of the organisms that are in our environment, they have extreme capabilities of adaptations. And one of the very beautiful examples is this pathogens or endoparasites, we call it as. Endoparasites have this exceptional capacity to adapt to your body environment. So you can understand what would be the gut environment, like in your small intestine, what would be the environment in your small intestine, right? It is so alkaline. There is so many biomolecules that are synthesized and are present, right? Some of the pathogens infect your liver. So they live in the liver conditions. So they must have very strong capabilities of adaptation within the host body. Okay. So one of the very good examples for this endoparasites is Ascaris. Okay. So Ascaris lumbricans is a causative organism or a pathogen, which is a parasite, intestinal parasite, that causes a disease called as Ascariasis. Okay. So Ascariasis, as I said, it is caused by Ascaris. Okay. So how does it infect? Mode of transmission is very, very, very unique here. What happens when a person who is playing in the soil, okay, eats food without washing your hands, or vegetables, fruits, water, okay, when it is not washed properly and it is eaten like that, usually the eggs from these sources, that is soil, water, vegetables, and fruits, they enter through our oral cavity. From oral cavity, it goes and settles in the small intestine. Okay. So here, what happens from small intestine, they can either use lungs or they use the acidic pH. Okay. Again, they go back to the small intestine, and that is where they colonize. Okay. Here, they produce eggs in the small intestine. Okay. They reproduce and produce eggs in the small intestine, and it is eliminated to the fecal matter. So you can see that one of the major problems in our country is open defecation, where people do not use toilets, for defecating. When they do not use toilets for defecating, diseases like this occur very usually. So when the eggs are eliminated in the fecal matter, usually these eggs are again picked up by us through soil, water, vegetables, and fruits. Again, it goes to our oral cavity. Again, it goes and colonizes the small intestine, and the infection cycle continues. Okay. So it's very, very bad. Okay. Let's see what are the symptoms. Because it goes and attaches to the walls of the small intestine, it causes excessive internal bleeding. There is muscular pain. Okay. Your body pain will be sustained. There is fever, anemia. The anemia is because of the loss of blood. Okay. And people will lose a tremendous amount of blood here. So anemia is there. And then there is blockage of intestinal passage, and usually there is even a passage of blood while excretion, and excruciating pain during defecation can be experienced with the symptoms of ascariasis. All right. So these are some of the symptoms, and this is how some of the ways ascaris spreads. Okay. So that is why it is always recommended to wash and maintain hygiene and use sanitation and avoid open defecation to prevent diseases such as these. Okay. All right, students. So here we come to the end of our session today. We'll continue on with the coming slides in the tomorrow session. If you have any doubts, you can post doubts in the chat box. I'll wait here for some time. And I will launch poll for NPS form. You can just give me a teacher NPS. Yeah. So you have 5 questions here in NPS form. Please try to fill it up. Students from YouTube, if you have any problems, please let me know. Or if you have any doubts, please let me know. Yeah. All right, students, thank you for your input. I'll see you in the next class. Okay. Take care. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.